First contact. A massive alien fleet appeared suddenly at the edge of the solar system. 53 ships of various sizes hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. They weren't moving. Not toward Earth. Not anywhere. The first person to notice was Diane Powell, a technician at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Station in Nevada. She had been tracking routine asteroid movements when her instruments detected unusual energy signatures beyond Pluto's orbit. "Dr. Morris, you need to see this," she called, waving over her supervisor. Dr. Alan Morris adjusted his glasses and leaned toward the monitor. His eyes widened as he processed what he was seeing. "That's impossible," he whispered. But the readings were clear. The objects were artificial and enormous, the largest nearly 15 miles long, and they were broadcasting. Within hours, NASA headquarters was buzzing with activity. Scientists from every department crowded around screens, analyzing the strange signal being transmitted from the fleet. It wasn't random noise or simple mathematical sequences like scientists had always expected from first contact. This was complex. "It's technical data," said Alan, 3 days into the non-stop analysis. "These look like engineering schematics." The government called in cryptographers and linguists, who made the breakthrough on day 5. The message contained coordinates, technical specifications, and a request for help in a surprisingly straightforward format designed to be understood. They called themselves the Valyrians. Their fleet had suffered catastrophic engine failures across all vessels. They were stranded, carrying thousands of their kind, including many in suspended animation. Their message was specific. Humans were the only species in this sector with the unique technological capability to help them. "But that makes no sense," said General Laura Jenkins during the emergency briefing at the White House. "We've barely left our own planet. How could we possibly have technology advanced enough to help them?" The president sat quietly, considering the situation. "What exactly are they asking for?" Alan cleared his throat. "They need engineers, not our ships. According to their message, there's something about human technical intuition that's uniquely suited to repair their propulsion systems." The room fell silent. "Could it be a trap?" someone finally asked. "Possibly," admitted Alan. "But they've made no aggressive moves. They've just waited, and their ships show signs of damage consistent with their story." The debate lasted for days. Representatives from major nations argued about the risks and potential rewards. Meanwhile, the alien fleet continued to drift, their systems apparently running on minimal power. The decision came after a week of deliberation. The president addressed the world from the Oval Office. "Today, we face an unprecedented situation. Visitors from beyond our solar system have requested our help. After careful consideration and international consultation, we have decided to respond. We will send a team of our finest engineers, scientists, and military personnel to assess the situation." Within days, a selection process began for what would become humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. The criteria were demanding. Top experts in propulsion, xenobiology, and engineering, along with military personnel trained for the unknown. At NASA's Johnson Space Center, newly appointed mission director Dr. Maya Wilson reviewed candidate files. "Do we even have a ship capable of reaching them?" she asked Alan. He nodded. "We're repurposing the experimental Orion vessel. It wasn't supposed to launch for another year, but it's our only craft with the necessary range." Outside the conference room window, technicians were already preparing the ship. Earth's response to the alien call for help was taking shape. Across the world, people gathered around televisions and devices, their eyes turned to the skies, wondering what this strange request meant for humanity's future among the stars. The unlikely heroes. The selection committee spent 3 tense days reviewing personnel files. In the end, they chose 3 people to lead the mission to the Valyrian fleet. Olivia Grant hadn't expected the call. At 34, she was the youngest lead engineer at NASA's propulsion laboratory. Her colleagues respected her genius, but found her difficult to work with. Olivia preferred machines to people. They made sense to her in a way humans never did. "Ms. Grant, your country needs you," the voice on the phone had said. Now she stood in a Houston hangar, staring up at the experimental ship that would carry them to the edge of the solar system. The Orion wasn't supposed to be ready for another year, but emergency modifications had accelerated the timeline. "Impressive, isn't it?" said a deep voice behind her. Captain Frank Martinez extended his hand. His military posture and confident smile contrasted with Olivia's awkward demeanor. As the mission's security commander, he brought 15 years of naval experience and a reputation for leadership. "It'll work," Olivia replied, ignoring his hand. "But the fuel calculations are tight. We'll barely make it there with enough reserves to return." Frank's smile faded. "That's comforting." The third member of their core team arrived carrying a heavy case of equipment. Dr. Sam Wilson was a xenobiologist who had spent his career theorizing about alien life. Now he would be the first human to study it directly. "Sorry I'm late," Sam said, putting down his case and pushing his glasses up. "I was recalibrating my analysis tools for the fourth time." The three leaders examined each other with uncertainty. These strangers would depend on one another far from home, representing humanity to an advanced alien species. Their training began immediately. 16-hour days of emergency spacecraft procedures, communication protocols, and endless technical briefings. The rest of the 20-person crew rotated through specialized training while the core team struggled to build trust. "You can't just override safety protocols because you feel like it," Frank argued during a simulation. "Your protocols will get us killed if the reactor fluctuates," Olivia shot back. Sam intervened. "Both approaches have merit. Perhaps a compromise." Their breakthrough came during the third week of training. Alan Morris rushed into the simulation chamber with new information decoded from the Valyrian transmissions. "We figured out why they need us," he said, displaying complex schematics on the screen. "Their ship interfaces require a specific type of intuitive problem-solving their species lacks." Olivia studied the diagrams of the alien technology. "It's a biological interface. They need humans because we think differently." That night, the three leaders met in the empty cafeteria. "So we're not just mechanics," Frank said, sipping coffee. "We're essential because of how our brains work." Sam nodded. "Our neural pathways must be compatible with their technology in ways theirs aren't." Olivia remained quiet, her mind racing through the implications. Finally, she looked up at her teammates. "We need to stop fighting each other," she said softly. "Whatever's waiting for us up there, we face it together." The three clinked their coffee mugs in silent agreement. Launch day arrived faster than anyone expected. The modified Orion sat on the launch pad, loaded with specialized equipment and supplies for the 20-day journey. News crews from around the world broadcast live as the three mission leaders gave brief statements. "We go as representatives of Earth," Frank told the cameras. "Not just America, but all humanity." Sam spoke about the scientific significance, while Olivia simply said, "We'll fix their ships and come home." As they climbed aboard, Olivia felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Billions of people were watching. An alien civilization was waiting. And somehow, out of everyone on Earth, she had been chosen to help save them. The countdown began. Journey to the edge. The Orion lifted off with a thunderous roar that shook the ground for miles. Millions watched live streams as the ship climbed through the atmosphere, carrying humanity's first interstellar rescue team toward the distant Valyrian fleet. Inside, the crew strapped tightly into acceleration chairs as key forces pressed them down. Olivia closed her eyes, mentally tracking each stage of the launch sequence. When the final engine cut off, leaving them in the silence of space, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Status report," Frank called, unbuckling to float toward the command console. "All systems nominal," responded the pilot. "We're on course for the rendezvous point." The journey would take 19 days at maximum speed. The crew settled into their roles, monitoring systems and preparing equipment for their arrival. During off-duty hours, they studied the limited information available about the Valyrians. On the fourth day, Sam made a discovery while analyzing the alien transmissions. "Everyone, you need to see this," he called over the ship's intercom. The team gathered in the small lab section. Sam pointed to a series of decoded messages displayed on his screen. "These aren't just distress calls," he explained. "They contain historical records. The Valyrians aren't just drifting in space. They're refugees." He played a visual recording showing sleek ships under attack from aggressive angular vessels. The attacking ships fired weapons that seemed to disrupt the Valyrian vessels' systems rather than destroy them outright. "They're fleeing from another species called the Drax," Sam continued. "It appears to be some sort of purge or conquest." Frank frowned. "Why didn't they tell us this initially?" "Probably afraid we'd refuse to help if we knew they had enemies," Olivia suggested. The revelation created tension among the crew. Some worried they were being drawn into an interstellar conflict. Others felt even more committed to the humanitarian mission. Frank grew increasingly suspicious. During a private meeting with Olivia and Sam, he voiced his concerns. "Something doesn't add up. Out of all the stars in the galaxy, why come to ours? Why ask humans specifically for help?" Sam had been wondering the same thing. In his lab, he'd been studying the biological components of Valyrian technology from the schematics they'd sent. "I found something interesting," he said. "Their ship systems have neural interfaces that seem compatible with human brain patterns. It's almost as if they were designed for us." Olivia finished his thought. The three looked at each other, the implication hanging in the air. Had the Valyrians known about humans before their crisis? Had they been watching Earth? By the 12th day, the crew could finally see the Valyrian fleet through their telescopes. The scale became apparent. The largest Valyrian ship was nearly 3 miles long, dwarfing their small vessel. "My God," whispered one of the engineers. "It's beautiful." The alien ships featured elegant, flowing designs unlike anything humans had created. They appeared to be made of a material that reflected light in ways that created subtle color shifts across their surfaces. As they grew closer, they began receiving clearer transmissions, including visual data of the Valyrians themselves. The aliens were tall, slender beings with translucent skin that seemed to pulse with inner light. Their movements were graceful but precise. On the final approach day, the crew prepared for docking procedures. Olivia checked her toolkit for the 20th time. "Are you nervous?" Sam asked her. "Terrified," she admitted, "but also excited. No human has ever done what we're about to do." Frank floated over to join them by the viewport. Together, they watched as the massive Valyrian command ship grew larger, filling their view with its shimmering surface. "For better or worse," Frank said quietly, "humanity's place in the universe changes today." Among the stars, the Orion approached the massive Valyrian command ship, which dwarfed their vessel like a whale beside a minnow. Their communications officer established a docking protocol with the aliens, and soon they felt a gentle tug as the Valyrian ship's automated systems guided them into a docking bay. "Atmosphere readings show breathable air," Sam announced, checking his instruments. "Gravity slightly lighter than Earth's." Frank addressed the crew before they disembarked. "Remember your training. We're diplomats as much as engineers. Our actions represent all of humanity." The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. The human team stepped through into a vast chamber unlike anything they had imagined. The walls pulsed with gentle blue light. The floor seemed solid, but had a slight give to it, like walking on living tissue. 3 Valyrians waited for them. Up close, the aliens were even more striking than in the transmissions. 7 feet tall with luminescent skin that rippled with colors reflecting their emotions. Their 4 upper limbs moved with precise, fluid motions. Where humans would have faces, they had a cluster of sensory organs surrounding a central speaking apparatus. "We welcome Earth humans," said the central Valyrian, its voice musical and resonant. "I am Coordinator Elian. We are grateful for your response to our call." The aliens led them through corridors that seemed partly mechanical and partly organic. Crew members tried to maintain their composure despite their wonder. They arrived in a circular chamber where several more Valyrians waited. The High Council. 47 cycles we have drifted, said the head counselor. Our people's future rests with you. The formality of the meeting gave way to technical discussions. Olivia was taken to examine their propulsion systems, while Sam was invited to study their biological technology. Frank and his security team were given a tour of the main ship. Olivia found herself in an engine room unlike anything in human engineering. What appeared to be technology was fused with biological components that pulsed and flowed with energy. Our drive cores are inactive, explained her Valyrian guide, who called himself Engineer Thelen. Without neural pilots, they cannot function. Olivia ran her hand over a console. To her surprise, it warmed and lit up at her touch. It responds to you, Thelen said, his skin flashing with excited colors. Just as our models predicted. Across the ship, Sam made his own discovery. The Valyrians had taken him to a quiet section where thousands of transparent pods lined the walls. Our youngest, explained his guide. In stasis until we find a new home. Sam examined the pods. Inside each was a small Valyrian, perfectly preserved, but with dimming life support indicators. How long can they survive like this? He asked. Without full power, perhaps 30 more cycles. Then they fade. Meanwhile, Frank noticed something the Valyrians hadn't mentioned. Along one section of the outer hull, he spotted clear evidence of weapons damage. What caused this? He asked his guide. The Valyrian's skin darkened. The Dracs. They disabled our neural pilots, leaving us adrift. When the team regrouped that evening aboard the Orion, they shared their findings. There's something they're not telling us, Frank said. They keep talking about neural pilots, but won't explain exactly what happened to them. Their technology is incredible, Olivia added. It's almost like it's alive, and it responded to my touch in ways that surprised even them. Sam looked troubled. Those children in stasis won't survive much longer without full power. Whatever the Valyrians are hiding, we need to help them. Later that night, the High Council requested a private meeting with the 3 human leaders. In a chamber deep within the command ship, the head counselor's skin glowed with intense colors. We must share the complete truth, the alien said. We called for humans specifically because your species possesses something unique in this sector of space. What would that be? Frank asked cautiously. An energy field your kind is unaware of, replied the counselor. What some of your people might call a soul. The truth revealed. Olivia, Frank, and Sam stared at the Valyrian High Counselor in stunned silence. The alien's skin rippled with patterns that suggested anxiety or perhaps shame. I don't understand, Olivia finally said. What do you mean by soul? The head counselor gestured to a nearby control panel. A holographic display appeared, showing schematics of both human and Valyrian biology side by side. Your species generates a neural energy pattern we have never encountered elsewhere, explained the alien. It resonates at frequencies that can interface directly with our ship systems. Frank crossed his arms. You're saying we have some kind of psychic ability. Not psychic, physical, measurable. Your brains produce wave patterns that our technology was designed to respond to. Over the next several hours, the truth emerged. The Valyrians had once had a specialized caste of their own species who could operate their biological ships. These navigators possessed unique neural patterns that connected with their vessels. The Dracs, their enemies, had specifically targeted and eliminated this caste, rendering the entire Valyrian fleet useless. You tracked our radio signals, Sam realized. You came to our solar system deliberately. Yes, admitted the counselor. Our long-range scans detected compatible neural patterns from your planet. You were our only hope. Back on the Orion, the human team debated what they had learned. They need human pilots, Olivia said. That's why our touch activates their systems. They should have told us from the beginning, Frank argued, not hidden behind a story about mechanical failures. Sam paced the small conference room. They were afraid we'd refuse if we knew the full truth. And honestly, can you blame them? Their children are dying in those stasis pods. The next morning, Olivia decided to test the Valyrian's claims. With Thelen observing, she placed her hands on the main propulsion interface. She closed her eyes, focusing her thoughts as the Valyrian had instructed. The system responded immediately. Lights flared to life across the engine room. Displays that had been dark for months suddenly glowed with information. "It works," she whispered, feeling the strange connection between her mind and the ship's systems. It wasn't like using a computer. It was more like the ship became an extension of her body. "You have awakened it," Thelen said, his skin flashing with joyful colors. After so long. Word spread quickly through both ships. Olivia had proven humans could interface with Valyrian technology. Hope flowed through the alien fleet for the first time in months. The human team gathered to discuss their next steps. They needed to create an interface that would allow multiple humans to help restart the most critical systems across the fleet. As they worked, Sam discovered something in the Valyrian communication records. He brought it directly to Frank and Olivia. "I found this while searching their databases," he said, showing them a partially decoded message. "The Dracs haven't given up. They're tracking the fleet." Frank examined the data. "How far away are they?" Based on these coordinates, Sam's voice trailed off. 2 days, maybe less. The 3 leaders brought this information to the High Council. The Valyrian skin darkened with fear. "We did not wish to burden you with this knowledge," the head counselor said. "The Dracs seek to eliminate us entirely. That is why we need your help so urgently." Olivia stood up. "We need to evacuate as many of your people as possible to the ships we can get operational, starting with the children in stasis. That would require many human interfaces," Thelen pointed out. "More than your small crew." "Then teach us," Olivia replied. "Show us how to connect properly with your ships. We'll work around the clock." As they left the council chamber, Frank pulled Olivia and Sam aside. "We have less than 48 hours to prepare for a battle with aliens we know nothing about, using technology we barely understand. Then we better get started," Olivia said, her face set with determination. Battle for survival. The warning came sooner than expected. A Valyrian sensor operator's skin flashed alarming colors as they burst into the command center. Drax vessels detected, 3 warships approaching at high speed. Frank immediately switched to crisis mode. "How long do we have?" "Less than 6 hours," replied the head counselor, skin pulsing with fear. The human Valyrian team had managed to restart power systems on 5 of the refugee ships, but none were yet capable of fleeing. Olivia had spent 18 straight hours working with the alien engineers, teaching other humans how to interface with the biological systems. "We need to prioritize," Frank announced. "Which ships have the most children in stasis?" The Valyrians directed them to 3 large vessels near the center of the fleet. Frank dispatched teams to focus all efforts there while he worked with the few Valyrian security forces to prepare defenses. Olivia found herself aboard the largest refugee carrier, her hands pressed against the main neural interface. The connection was getting stronger each time she linked with the systems. She could feel the ship as if it were part of her body. "I need to try something," she told Thelen. "Connect me to the flagship system." The Valyrian hesitated. "A full neural link is dangerous for untrained minds." "We don't have time for training," Olivia insisted. Reluctantly, Thelen adjusted the interface settings. Olivia gasped as her consciousness expanded dramatically. Suddenly, she could sense the entire Valyrian flagship, from its outer hull to its deepest corridors. She could feel thousands of Valyrians moving throughout its sections. "I can do this," she whispered. "I can fly this ship." Across the fleet, Sam had developed a simplified neural interface that allowed the human crew to connect with Valyrian systems without specialized training. The makeshift devices looked like metallic headbands with organic components. It won't give you full control, he explained to the volunteers, but it will let you direct enough power to get the life support and engines running. As the humans connected with various ships, lights began to flicker on throughout the previously dormant fleet. Systems that had been dead for months hummed back to life. Frank had established a defensive perimeter using the few Valyrian ships with functioning weapon systems. The Valyrians were peaceful by nature, their weapons designed mainly to disable rather than destroy. But Frank had devised a strategy using Earth military tactics. "They'll expect you to defend from a distance," he told the Valyrian security chief. "Instead, we'll use your short-range pulse weapons at close quarters where they're most effective." The first Drax ship appeared at the edge of the fleet. Unlike the elegant flowing lines of Valyrian vessels, the Drax craft was angular and predatory, bristling with weapons. "They're scanning us," reported a Valyrian operator. "They've detected power signatures from our reactivated ships." Two more Drax vessels materialized nearby, moving to surround the fleet. "They're targeting the ships we've powered up," Frank realized. "Sam, how's the evacuation coming?" Over the comm, Sam's voice was tense. "We've transferred 60% of the stasis pods to the main evacuation vessels. Need at least 20 more minutes." "You've got 10, Frank replied as the first Drax ship launched a barrage of energy weapons. The battle erupted across the void of space. Valyrian defensive systems, guided by human neural connections, responded better than the Drax had anticipated. Frank's unconventional tactics confused the attackers, who had expected the standard Valyrian defensive formation. Aboard the flagship, Olivia had achieved something unprecedented. Fully integrated with the ship's systems, she maneuvered the massive vessel with the intuitive grace of a dancer. The flagship moved to shield the vulnerable evacuation ships, its defensive screens absorbing hit after hit from Drax weapons. "The final stasis pods are aboard." Sam's triumphant voice came through the comm. "All children accounted for." In the command center, Frank watched as the powered refugee ships began to move away from the battle zone. The Drax ships adjusted course to pursue. "Now, Olivia," Frank ordered. The flagship responded instantly, cutting between the Drax vessels and their prey, weapons firing in patterns the Drax had never encountered. Human battle strategies executed through Valyrian technology. The tide was turning. A new alliance. The flagship rocked as Drax weapons fire impacted its shields. Olivia, still connected to the neural interface, felt each hit as if it were striking her own body. Yet she maintained control, guiding the massive vessel through maneuvers that the Drax couldn't predict. "Their attack patterns are becoming erratic," Frank observed from the command center. They've never faced human tactics before. The lead Drax warship pressed its attack, focusing all weapons on the flagship's shield generators. Alarms blared across the command deck as systems strained under the assault. "Shields at 17%, reported a Valyrian operator, skin flashing warning colors. Sam's voice came through the comm. "The evacuation ships are almost at safe distance. They need 2 more minutes." Frank made a quick decision. "Olivia, can you get us close enough to disable their main weapons array?" Through the neural link, Olivia responded directly to Frank's mind. The sensation startled him, her thoughts flowing into his consciousness with crystal clarity. "I can do better than that," she projected. The flagship surged forward, directly toward the lead Drax vessel. The enemy ship tried to veer away, but Olivia anticipated its every move. Using the flagship's specialized pulse emitters, weapons designed to disable rather than destroy, she targeted the Drax ship's control systems. The pulse hit with perfect accuracy. The Drax warship went dark, its weapons and engines suddenly offline. The other 2 Drax vessels hesitated, their coordinated attack faltering. Frank seized the opportunity, directing the Valyrian defense ships to surround them. Caught between human ingenuity and Valyrian technology, the remaining Drax ships retreated, jumping to faster-than-light speed and disappearing from sensors. In the sudden quiet that followed, Olivia slowly disconnected from the neural interface. Her hands trembled as Thelen helped her stand. "What you did was unprecedented," the engineer said, his skin glowing with amazement. "No Valyrian has ever achieved such complete integration with a flagship." The victory celebration was brief. Though they had repelled the immediate threat, the Dracs would return with a larger force. The fleet needed a permanent solution. 3 days later, the human and Valyrian leadership gathered on the flagship's observation deck. Through the vast viewing portal, they could see Earth crews arriving in additional ships, bringing specialists who had volunteered after hearing about the successful defense. "We've analyzed what happened during the battle," Sam explained, displaying his findings on a holographic screen. When Olivia fully connected with the ship, her neural patterns changed. They began adapting to the Valyrian interface. "And the inverse is also true," added Thelen. "Our systems began adapting to her human patterns." Olivia stepped forward. "This means we don't need humans to permanently pilot your ships. We can teach your people to develop the neural patterns yourselves." The head counselor's skin rippled with hope. "Is this possible?" "It's like learning a new language," Sam said. "Difficult, but achievable with practice and the right teachers." The solution was elegant. A training program where human volunteers would work with Valyrians, teaching them to develop the neural patterns needed to pilot their own vessels. In return, the Valyrians would share their advanced technology with Earth. As word spread back home, thousands of humans volunteered. The United Nations established a formal alliance with the Valyrian High Council, marking humanity's first interstellar diplomatic agreement. 6 months later, Olivia stood on the deck of the flagship, watching as a joint human-Valyrian crew prepared for departure. The ship, now named Unity in both human and Valyrian languages, would lead the fleet to a new homeworld the Valyrians had identified, beyond Drax territory. Frank joined her at the viewport. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up when we got that first distress call?" Olivia shook her head. "I thought we'd fix some engines and come home. Instead, we're about to explore the galaxy." Sam approached with 2 Valyrian children, their skin glowing with excited colors. "These 2 wanted to thank the humans who saved them," he explained. As Olivia knelt to greet the children, she reflected on how far they had all come. What began as a rescue mission had transformed into something much greater, humanity's first steps into a wider galactic community. The flagship's engines hummed to life, operated by a Valyrian pilot who had successfully learned the neural patterns from his human teachers. Earth was no longer alone among the stars.